am going to be using shoeboxes to teach you how to write a better compare and contrast essay. Why shoeboxes? I don't know. I'm not good at the techie part with the new thing I'm trying to record yet, so I haven't figured out really how to edit over my videos. I would love advice, particularly for free tech if you have it. So I'm using shoeboxes. You were most likely taught to write compare and contrast essays by clumping together differences and similarities and writing about it as such. This is a bad idea. Though you can write a decent compare and contrast essay in this method, it's actually more difficult because things aren't all black and white. They're not 100% different and 100% the same. There are similarities in the differences and vice versa, differences within the similarities. If things were 100% different and 100% the same, there'd make no sense in comparing and contrasting them. If you are comparing an apple and you are comparing a car, they are so different. I dare you to try to find something that makes sense to compare them. They're just too different. Now, if we're comparing apples and oranges, okay, those are both foods, those are both fruits. Those have different points that would make sense. If we are comparing one apple to the other, not even just different types of apples, but the same apple, like we cut it in half and we're comparing the halves, okay, are there really enough differences there to have a reasonable compare and contrast essay? Probably not. That similarity and differences method, throw it out the window. Well, don't throw it out the window, just put it on the back burner. To write a compare and contrast essay, there are 3 different things you need. The things you're comparing and contrasting, the similarity and differences, but also the point in which you're discussing. You can write a compare and contrast essay by focusing on each of these 3 points. Similarity and differences, we already talked about that, putting on the back burner. So we're going to focus on these other 2. I almost helped read it again. These other 2. So these methods are called point by point, or subject by subject, or block by block. That one has a few different names. I'll go into that a bit more later. Point by point will be the easiest way to write a compare and contrast essay. What do I mean by the points in which we're discussing them? So let's go back to that apples and oranges example. If we are comparing and contrasting apples and oranges, well, those are our subject, the 2 things we're comparing and contrasting. But what are we talking about them with? Well, they're both food. They have a taste. So one of our topics might be the way they taste. Apples have a variety of different flavors that taste sweet and bitter and sour and all across the board. Oranges, on the other hand, though there are different varieties, they're predominantly citrusy. So the idea of taste, there's a discussion there that we can have. We can go to different examples about how they taste. We can also talk about the way they are grown. Apples are grown in trees, as are oranges. However, they need different environments to survive and thrive and grow properly. And okay, we have their taste and the way they're grown. And I don't like the 5-paragraph essay, but I'm going to come up with a 3rd example just for this situation. The way they look. Oranges are typically rounder, though they vary in size. Apples can be round, they can be more oblong, they can be more like the apple-y heart shape. They can be in lots of different colors. So their physical appearance is also very different. So those are our talking points. Their taste, how they're grown, and their look. So we're comparing and contrasting them within those ideas. Visually, what this will look like in your essay, and here's my shoebox, is a point. We'll have 1 paragraph that is discussing apples and oranges under each of our points. So it allows for a nice back and forth discussion of both. So we have this first paragraph here. I'm trying to make it as visual as possible. I normally describe this with paper. I really should just get better at editing. This one here is our first category, how they taste. That whole thing I just said about their taste. Apples have lots of different tastes, but oranges are mostly citrusy. Back and forth, talking about them both. This whole paragraph. This is a paragraph. It's talking about taste. Next paragraph, boom, underneath it, talking about, trying to lens the camera, talking about their grown. Apples and oranges, both about them growing in trees with different environments, exploring that, explaining that, comparing, contrasting. Okay, this point is done. Boom, paragraph done. Next one, so on and so forth. Their appearance, we're going back and forth talking about them both. If you notice with this structure, in each of these 3 ones, we are addressing both topics. We are talking both about apples and oranges in every single paragraph of discussion. And there may be similarities and there may be differences, but it really depends on the point. In each thing I list, there were similarities within the differences. So that's point by point, going back and forth between each different point you're discussing and exploring the similarities and differences within your given topics. So the other method you might hear is the subject by subject, or as I like to call it, the block by block method. My shoebox. Again, same shoebox. So point by point, we're 1 point at a time. Block by block takes a different approach. So rather than focusing on the points of discussion, we are focusing on the subject we are comparing and contrasting. So in this case, it'd be apples and oranges. So we'd have one paragraph that looked like this. This is kind of a big block of information. This whole paragraph, we are only talking about apples. We are talking about the way that they taste, the way that they are grown, the way that they look. Every single detail, everything about apples is going in this one section. This may or may not be multiple paragraphs, but for the sake of explaining, I'm just going to say one paragraph. This is much longer than our other paragraphs here that were short, to the point, and focused. This one is taking all of our apple information, pulling it from that, and sticking it in one spot together. We're not even touching oranges yet. So after we've discussed all those things with apples, then we began discussion with oranges underneath in the section over here. Now this is our orange discussion. The same thing, we're talking about all those same different points, everything that made up our point by point discussion. We're doing it here in this format. What makes this tricky is because you have to make sure you are comparing and contrasting. You're talking about them separately. So either after your discussion of apples, you use your introduction of oranges to add a compare contrast point. So for example, with the taste, while apples have a variety of taste, this is not the case for oranges. So you've added that contrast right in there, and you go into detail exploring it. And you'd have to do that for each thing you're discussing with the oranges. And that could be a little bit tricky. So what's easiest to do is have a small separate paragraph after that kind of pulls back and saying, okay, this is similar, this is different, this is similar, this is different, because you've already explained everything. So you don't need to go back and re-explain it. Make sure that if you do this method, you are not going back and re-explaining it. You are just touching upon it and re-emphasizing the ideas, not re-explaining. This is key. A lot of people will look at these two methods and be like, oh, block by block, that's the one for me. I'll totally get a longer essay out of it. Wrong. Writing an essay in block by block is harder to make it a compare and contrast, because typically what happens is you talk all about one thing and all about the other, and that's it. For example, at the apples and oranges, talk all about apples, all about oranges, and nothing about the two of them together. That's not a compare and contrast essay, that's just a discussion on two different subjects. It's being like, here's my friend Jack, here's my friend Jill. That's it. Instead of being like, oh, here's my friend Jack, he likes to play soccer. Here's my friend Jill, she also likes to play soccer. And they like to play soccer together. However, they are often on different teams, and Jill wins. I don't know. Whatever that discussion is, that blends these two of them together. It's not just like awkwardly sitting there like, hey, point by point, makes that compare and contrast so much easier, because you are naturally transitioning and comparing and contrasting between each topic. So while apples do this, on the other hand, oranges do this. Likewise, apples are this. Similarly, oranges are this. It allows for really easy back and forth, because ultimately that's what makes compare and contrast essay. It's not what you're saying, but it's the transition you're using. That is the key in writing compare and contrast essays. So no matter which of the three structures you're doing, separating by similarities or differences, point by point, or the block method, no matter which one you take, as long as you are effectively using compare and contrast language, you can write a good compare and contrast essay. So I hope these shoes helped you get in the right foot for your compare and contrast essay. I hate myself for that one too. But let me know your thoughts. Do you have questions? Do you want me to use other weird objects to try to explain it? Can somebody help me figure out the tech of how to make that like magically appear around me so I can just talk and make it show up later? Love to know. Have any other questions, comments, concerns? I post videos twice a week. I can't wait to see you next time.